camera on now if you want.
Okay, you're going live now. You are live, Councillor Aitken.
That's great, thank you, Kate. So we are live then on our first ever virtual ward forum in Kings Norton, which is for residents of Kings Norton North and Kings Norton South. It's not as fun not being able to see you all and interact with you all, but I'm hoping you can all see me and hear me. And there should be a comments box for if you want to put questions in. We purposely had this as a Q&A to have that sort of back and forth despite not being able to see each other. So if you do have any questions at any point, please do pop them in there or send them to me on Facebook or email them to me or whatever. Before we start, I just have to give notice that this meeting will be recorded. Obviously, none of you will be able to be seen in that, but it is recorded and will be available after the meeting. So I think we'll get straight on then to section 3 of the agenda, which is the COVID-19 update. And I mean, we timed this very well, actually, with obviously the announcements yesterday about lifting of restrictions and returning to the tier system. I'd like to say that I had a crystal ball and knew that was going to be a day before this meeting, but it's just complete potluck. But if you are confused by them, worried about them, then now is your opportunity to raise with the wonderful Dr. Justin Varney, who has been an absolute hero in Birmingham over the last few months. I'm sure he won't mind me saying that. And is also the fountain of all knowledge. So I will hand straight over to him. There you go, Justin, if you want to give us your update, and then I have a few questions and we'll open up to any questions that come in on the chat too.
Great, thank you, Councillor, and thank you for having me at your inaugural online ward forum. I am becoming a bit of an old hand at them now, I think, and I've just come from Sutton Vesey ward forum to you, so it feels like I'm doing the tour of the city in one night. So what I thought I'd do is I'll talk a little bit about where we are in general. I'll then talk specifically about Kings Norton, North and South, and where you are in the stats. I'll touch a bit on testing and a bit on vaccination, and then a bit on tiers. So I'll try and do that in about 20 minutes if I can. So first of all, where we are at the moment, obviously COVID first appeared in December last year. We saw the first case in the UK in February, and then the first case in Birmingham in early March. We saw a rapid increase in cases in Birmingham over April and May, and then from the middle of May we started to come down. We came out of lockdown in June, and what we saw was case numbers stayed relatively low, but at the same time testing was starting to increase and we were getting more access to testing, and we were doing okay until really the end of August. And at the end of August, case numbers really started to pick up and continued to go up over September, and that's where we went into first enhanced support and then national restrictions and then national tier 2. And what that was really focusing on was asking people not to go into each other's private houses and private gardens, because we were seeing most of the spread being between people who knew each other. So you're most likely to catch COVID from someone you know, and you're more likely to catch it if you're indoors with the windows closed, sitting around closely with each other. And we've seen that consistently through the outbreak. So since September and over October, our case numbers continue to rise. Now, it's fair to say Birmingham's done much better than anyone would have predicted, and that's down to the work that you each do every day, making sensible, correct decisions about managing the risk and not spreading the virus to the people you care about. Because you would expect Birmingham to have gone straight up like Liverpool did or Manchester did, and we haven't. We've just taken our time and we've been much more carefully climbing the stairs, going in the same direction, but much more slowly than other areas. And that's really because of all the work Birmingham people are doing and we are doing across the city. So what we've seen as we've gone into national restrictions is that that rate of increase has got flatter and flatter and flatter. And over the last couple of days, we've just started to see the early signs of it coming down. But it's the very, very early signs. And I think, you know, when we look at the national picture, we're still ranked in the top 20 areas across the country. Now, we've kept testing rates high. So what we're seeing there is probably a real picture, whereas some of the other parts of the country, like London, which have much lower testing rates, they've got much lower case rates, but that's because people aren't able to get a test. So the government is looking both at the case rates that we can all see. They're looking at the case rates in over 60s, which in Birmingham has continued to go up, unfortunately. We've not seen the same downward trend yet in our over 60s. They're looking at the percentage of tests that's positive. For us, that's just starting to come down. So we've gone from 14.9% of tests being positive down to, I think it was 14.3%. So it's not a big drop, it's a tiny little drop. We need to keep that coming down. They'll look at also the impact on hospitals. And what we've seen throughout this outbreak is case numbers rise in the community, and about 4 weeks later, we start to see them rise in hospital admissions. And we've seen that over September and October, the case numbers of people going into hospitals increased. On average, we're seeing about 40 to 50 people a day going into university hospitals, Birmingham, and about 20 to 30 a day going into Sandwell and City. And that's been stabilising, but it's still far, far too high. Fewer people are dying, which is good news because we're getting better at treating it, but people are staying in hospital longer, and all of that's basically blocking beds. So that means that the hospital beds that we would have to be able to do hip surgery or to bring people in for treatment, we can't use because there are COVID patients in those beds. So that's why the NHS is under so much pressure, and why we're being really careful about what happens next. Because in the normal time in winter, the weather gets cold, we slip on the ice, we break bones. When it's colder, we often have more trouble with our heart or with our lungs. So the NHS is always under pressure in winter, and COVID is removing any of the slack in the system. Any of those extra beds are being filled with COVID. So the NHS is very, very nervous that if we let up too quickly, they will just fall over. So that's the kind of balancing act we're seeing at the moment. In terms of, and that will play out in terms of which tier we go into. I can't tell you yet because I don't know. The meetings are happening over the next 3 days at a government level. What I can say is that government's very clear that areas will go in as local authority footprints as a minimum. So there will not be one rule for Kings Norton and a different rule for Sutton Vesey. That's not going to happen. We're going in as Birmingham. We are Birmingham. As many of you know, I live in the city now. This is my city too. We go into this together and we come out of it together. And it's on all of us taking responsibility for doing that. So whether we end up between tier 2 and 3, I'm not sure. I can't tell you, and I can't crystal ball gaze it. My hunch is it may well be more tier 3 for a couple of weeks to give us more of that downward trend. But it does depend on some of the data that I can't see that National are looking at. So then just moving on quickly to testing and vaccination, and then I'll talk about Kings Norton. So testing wise, 2 types of tests now. Well, 3 actually, sorry. So first of all, antibody testing, not available on the NHS, doesn't really tell you anything, doesn't make any difference to isolation or anything else. So frankly, I wouldn't bother doing it. It's a waste of your money. So let's ignore that one for the moment. There's a thing called PCR, which is the antigen test, right? That's the one where we've got the 10 testing sites across the city for walkthrough and the 2 drive-through sites. That's the test if you've got symptoms, high temperature, loss of sense of smell or taste, or a new persistent cough. Any of those 3, ring 119 or go on the NHS website and book a test. Plenty of appointments. I checked today, there were same day appointments in Birmingham, so it's not hard to get a test. Please get those tests. That test is looking for, have you been infected with COVID recently? So that will pick up even when you've only just been infected in the early couple of days. it'll detect it, but it will also detect it if you were infected last week. So it's very good at finding the virus. What it doesn't tell you is how infectious you are. So the new test that's been announced, this lateral flow, same swab, so it's the same big cotton wool bud up the back of your nose, back of your throat. That hasn't changed, I'm afraid, but it works in a different way. And that swab is then used by a technician and they put it into a little machine and that gives a result in 30 minutes. That test is very good at telling you you are currently infectious. What it's not good at saying is you've just caught COVID and you'll be infectious in 3 days. All it's very good at doing is today you're either infectious or you're not. And that can really help us with things like care home visiting. But so you'll see that starting to appear probably first for public sector staff who working face-to-face jobs, and then being rolled out in things like care home visiting over the next month or so. But you've got to have a technician that does the test. So it isn't something you can do at home on your own unless you're clinically trained. So that's where the 2 tests are going. And then finally, vaccine. So it's great news that we've got about 5 different types of vaccine that all seem to be working. All of them require 2 doses of vaccine, and the doses are normally about a month apart. All of them, you need to have had your flu jab. If you're entitled to a flu jab, you need to have your flu jab at least 4 weeks before you have your COVID jab. So if you are due to have a flu jab this year, please get on and book it, because we don't want that messing up your COVID jab. So please sort your flu jab quickly if you can. They are different in the way that they work. As far as I'm aware, none of them include any pig products, so that isn't a problem for any faith communities. And some of them are more effective, it seems, in older people. Some of them may be more effective in people with impaired immune systems. Now, there'll be a national decision about who gets which type of vaccine, probably defined by age and any existing health conditions. So you or I won't get a choice. We'll be offered a vaccine. The vaccine will not be mandatory for the general public. I think there might be some employment situations where you need to have the vaccine, but that's no different from what it is at the moment. So as a doctor, when I was working in hospital, I had to have had my BCG and I had to have had my MMR, otherwise I couldn't work. So I would expect we might see that for healthcare professionals, but for most of us, it will be a choice. But why wouldn't you want to have the vaccine? It's safe. It's been tested on tens of thousands of people to make sure it's safe and it makes sure it works. And we know that vaccination, after clean water and working toilets, vaccination is the best buy in public health terms. It's how we got rid of smallpox. It's how we controlled polio. You know, it saves lives every day, and the COVID vaccine is no different. It will take, I expect, about 6 months for everyone to get to a point where they've been offered their first dose. There will be prioritisation. The NHS are leading on this, not public health. But I would expect that to be care home residents first, health and social care staff, other over 80-year-olds, and then moving into people who are clinically vulnerable that would normally be offered the flu jab, and then the rest of us. So it'll be that kind of pecking order, but it'll take quite a long time for us to work through. So I've covered quite a lot there, but I'm happy to take any questions that you'd like me to pick up from the chat, councillors. Oh, sorry, I didn't talk about Kings Norton. I knew there was one thing that was important to touch with you today. So the latest numbers for Kings Norton South and Kings Norton North, the most accurate data we have is up to the 18th of November. And in Kings Norton South, that case rate was 230 cases per 100,000. And in Kings Norton North, it was 230 as well. So you're basically neck and neck in both wards. Overall, that was a slight reduction compared to the previous week. So Kings Norton South went from 36 cases down to 26, and Kings Norton North from 35 cases down to 27. But statistically, we would say that wasn't a full decline yet. So that's seen as being relatively stable, that drop. We really want to see both wards come down to kind of 10 or 15 cases a week, and then we would say that's you're on a decline. Across the whole city, the majority of wards have stayed pretty stable over the last 2 weeks. 5 have gone up slightly and 5 have come down slightly, but most areas have stayed statistically the same. And Kings Norton South and North are in the bottom quarter of wards across the city, which is really, really good news. And a reflection of how hard everyone is doing trying to get on top of the virus in your area and playing their part. So I think it's really important we all play our part. There is, as I said, new announcement tonight about Christmas. That's literally just been announced by the Prime Minister. It looks like it's 3 households can form a bubble for the week of Christmas, and it's an exclusive bubble. So you have to choose the 2 other households you're going to be with for that week, and you can't chop and change them. So that's no different from what we have as the normal social care bubble. And as I said, finally, the point is, whether we go into tier 2 or tier 3, we will go together as a city across Birmingham. There will be exemptions, I think, for that week of Christmas, but those will be coming out over the next couple of days around the travel. But it does say, I've just pulled it up today, it says you can travel between tiers for the purpose of meeting your Christmas bubble. So whatever tier we come into, we know for that period of Christmas, we can meet up with 2 other households, but only 2 for that Christmas week. And it doesn't matter where they are in the UK and what tier they are in the UK. My final point is, whatever happens with the restrictions, we need to keep in mind that it's the actions we take every day that reduce the risk of COVID killing the people we love. We have already lost over 1,500 people in this city to COVID. I don't want that number to be doubled by the time we come out of this. All of us want our relatives, our loved ones, to see many more Christmases. And we don't want, for the sake of one Christmas, to lose a lifetime of Christmases. So please think carefully in the decisions you make as the restrictions change. And please do everything you can to protect the people you love and care about.
That's brilliant. Thank you for that, Justin. There have been some messages in the chat box, and I've received a couple outside of this meeting as well. Before we do that, I'd like to just follow on from your final point then about Christmas. I guess, how much does the lifting of restrictions worry you in advance of Christmas? Because if people are out and mingling between now and the time that you're allowed to mix with 2 other households, I mean, does that worry you? Are there any sort of projections about what that could mean in terms of cases? Because before the national lockdown, they were saying that by Christmas Day we could have 4,000 deaths a day. I was just wondering if there were any projections on that. A second question was, you talked about the vaccine, but what does life look like alongside the vaccine rollout? Is it a kind of, again, similar to before, that lockdown restrictions are lifted gradually, and then at the point that everybody or the vast majority of the public have been vaccinated, that's when life sort of returns to whatever the new normal looks like? And again, sorry, just a secondary question to my previous one around Christmas. What do you have any sort of tips or worries about Christmas shopping this year? Because if anyone watching this is like me and leaves everything to the last minute, I've been in Primark on the 23rd of December, and it's shoulder to shoulder. Are there any sort of tips you can give for people doing Christmas shopping this year?
Let's bring myself off mute. There we go. So let me start with the point about what do we think the impact of mixing will be. So of course, the moment we start to mix again, we will see case numbers rise, and ultimately it will be up to us on whether those go rapidly up, or we do what happened in June, which was actually a much more gradual, and we kind of got 2 months of very gradual increase. And then I think people went a bit wild at the August bank holiday, to be honest, and that's where we saw rapid increase after the bank holiday weekend. So, you know, we know how to do this. We have done it before, and we've demonstrated that we can come out of lockdown and be sensible and manage it. And the judgment government's made is giving people this 5 days with 2 other households is a risk. And that's why I say you've got to think about who your 2 other households are. And if you've got a very elderly relative who's very vulnerable, this might not be the time. It might be better to wait and say, you know what, we're going to have a slightly strange Christmas and we'll celebrate in January when you've had the vaccine and things are a bit more careful. So that's the bit about the vaccine. As the vaccine rolls out, particularly as we vaccinate everyone who's most vulnerable of dying, so that's the over 80s and those in care homes and the people with long-term conditions. And once they've had the 2 doses, then I would expect us to see more of the restrictions lifted. And that's going to take probably at least 2 months. So keep in mind, this is hundreds of thousands of people across the country, and they've got to get them all vaccinated, 2 doses before we're sure that can be relaxed. So I think that's worth thinking through. But in my head, certainly I'm gearing up for, we're going to be in this weird world of restrictions probably until around June-ish. And then I would see we'd start to see pretty rapid relaxation over the summer. So I certainly wouldn't be rushing to book a holiday until the autumn. And when it comes to Christmas shopping, first of all, shame on you for leaving it till the 23rd. You should be getting planning, loads of local businesses to support in the city rather than the big chains. And take advantage. You know, it's really a good time to be supporting independent business in Birmingham. Lots of them have set up online stores. If you are going out to the shops, please make sure you're wearing a face covering from the bridge of your nose to under your chin. Visors don't work, waste of time. Got to be from the bridge of your nose to under your chin. Keep your distance in the shop, and just be sensible about it. And I would say little and often when it comes to your shopping for Christmas, rather than leaving it till the end, because I think it will be a bit of carnage. And you can put a bit more love and a bit more care into buying your Christmas presents if you do it early.
That's great, thank you. Peter, I don't know if you have any questions that you want to raise before I read out some messages from the chat. You're just muted at the moment.
There we are. Hopefully I'm with you now. I wonder if, Justin, you could fill us in on the situation with the schools in Birmingham now. We've certainly had a number of classes up here in Kings Norton South that have been affected. And the other question I've got is about long COVID. There's research coming out now that a number of people who were infected in the first phase are saying that it's gone on a long time. Have you got any views about that?
Yeah, so really good questions there. So first of all, in terms of the schools, what we're seeing in the schools is, in general, transmission doesn't seem to be happening in the school. So what happens is we end up with, say, 4 children in different year groups, all testing positive in the same couple of days, but they all were in different parts of the school at different times. And that suggests it isn't about transition in school. Where we have got some concerns is crowding at the school gates. Might be one of the spaces where transmission occurs. School runs. We have said throughout this for the last 2 months, please don't do school runs sharing cars with people you don't live with. And if you do, everyone's got to have a face covering on and all the windows have got to be open. And I have to say, I've not yet to see a car in Birmingham driving with all the windows open. So, that is where I would point the finger to some extent about where that might be happening. What we're seeing in the schools is that in primary school, it's much easier to bubble children into single classrooms. But in secondary school, children are studying multiple different subjects and not everyone's doing the same GCSEs or A levels. And that means you're having to bubble the whole year group and they are mixing. And I've only seen a couple of schools where they're so good at knowing exactly where every pupil sat that they've been able not to send the whole bubble home. Now, as I said, there are some things changing. So there are some pilots at the moment of whole school testing. So all the children testing every week. you think every child gets a nasal and a throat swab every single week. That's a big ask of the children. So we'll see how those play out. I'm not sure that loads of children will want to do that, frankly. So we will still see this world for a while of in and out. What the good news is, we do know that COVID doesn't make children seriously ill. So children who previously shielded don't need to shield anymore. And that was one of the big changes in this second wave, that even children with quite serious disabilities and diseases, when they caught COVID, didn't die and didn't get severely unwell. So that's really good news from that point of view. Sorry, Councillor, remind me what the second question was that you had.
The second question was about long COVID.
Yeah. So long COVID, we are learning more about, and COVID is an interesting condition because it is different from flu. So it's different because some of the symptoms are different. So with flu, you don't get that loss of sense of smell or taste. With flu, you often get achy muscles. You don't get that with COVID. But also, as you get sicker with COVID, it does things that flu doesn't do. So COVID seems to interact with our immune system and create this long COVID syndrome of kind of people being very, very tired, very fatigued for a long time and having problems. It also does things with our clotting system, which again is different. Flu doesn't cause these kind of problems. So the NHS has been setting up long COVID clinics and a long COVID care pathway. And I have to say, actually, University Hospitals Birmingham and University of Birmingham have been at the forefront of some of the research into how to support people with long COVID. So we're lucky in Birmingham that we've got some real experts on long COVID and the rehabilitation to support patients with it, because a small number of patients get this long COVID syndrome, and it does need a lot of work and a lot of support to help people to get back to normal.
That's great. Thank you for that, Justin. I'm just going to read out a few things that I said in the chat. I believe people can see these. But we have, so there was a question about the farmers market, about whether that's going to be able to go on. I know that there will be a number of people on this call who have an interest in that. And Justin has said that he believes that will be considered retail, so can open. So that means that next Saturday, myself, Peter, and other people on this call will have to get up early to do our stints at the market. But that's really good news. It's always nice to be in and around the market around Christmas time. What else have we got there? Oh, we've had a question there also about the impact of the NHS situation on cancer patients in Birmingham. If you give us something on that, and also will the injection cause a reaction? I presume that means about side effects and stuff. I've just read your response there that you said part of the trials to test safety and to ensure there aren't serious reactions. Most injections cause a site reaction, i.e. sore and red for a day or two, but no serious reactions have been reported. That is very good news. So yeah, if you could just give us a quick update on the impact on cancer patients, for example, that would be brilliant.
Yeah, so there has been an impact on what I call normal NHS services, particularly hospital-based services, and that's cancer patients, it's people waiting for hip operations. Each of those services has had to look at the risk of not doing the procedure, whether it could be done a different way. So cancer patients sometimes having their chemotherapy at home, so a nurse coming out rather than coming into the hospital to do it, for example. And those decisions are made on an individual patient basis. So they don't just go, that's it, no chemotherapy. They go, we are not going to be able to deliver chemotherapy normally. OK, let's look at each patient and work out what can we do? Can they wait? Does it make a big difference? Because some cancers grow very, very slowly, and it would be OK clinically to wait a little bit. Or is this an aggressive cancer and we've got to find a different way of doing it? And if that means someone going out or it means bringing them in to one of the hospital sites. So for a while, Solihull Hospital has been used as a kind of COVID-free site for treatment for patients that need it, whereas the COVID patients have been going into the QE. So that's the way they've tried to manage it. It's not perfect, but we've got to be realistic. The NHS is doing its absolute best to keep as many people as live as possible with the resources and capacity it has. And if you are a cancer patient and you've had treatment delayed, you should be able to get in contact with your Macmillan nurse or your cancer nurse specialist and say, can you explain to me what the plan is so I understand? That because they will have made that decision for each individual patient.
That's great, thank you. And I think I can speak for everybody on this call and watching at home when we offer our thanks to everybody who's been working in the NHS at every level. They really have been on the front line of that, and we must really thank them. Just on that though, do you think that there probably have been some sort of an excess number of deaths from other illnesses as a result of that? Obviously we've got the sort of the figure of people that have died from COVID, but do you believe that there is the sort of the death count is actually higher from people that have died as a result of COVID, but not necessarily from COVID?
Yes, we did see, Birmingham actually particularly saw a higher number of what are called excess deaths, so more deaths than we would expect in an average year from non-COVID reasons during particularly the Easter period. When we looked at what was behind that, and we did do some analysis of the death certificates and the causes of death, what it sadly suggested was that there were people who had things like heart attacks and didn't ring an ambulance because they were scared. They were too scared to go into hospital. They didn't think it was safe. So they suffered at home. And when eventually they got so sick that they had to call an ambulance, basically they couldn't be saved. And that's the key point that I want to get across on this, that we have lost people who potentially didn't need to die because they were scared. And they were scared by fake news that was being spread by irresponsible individuals. And rather than trust that the NHS is not going to put them in danger if it can possibly avoid it. I'm a clinical doctor by background. I trained originally in hospital medicine and then as a GP. I didn't come into being a doctor to put people's lives at risk. It's not what we're trained to do. It's not why we choose to do medicine. So I'd ask people, if you have got something changes, you get sudden crushing chest pain, ring 999. If you get a new pain and something's different, ring your GP. You may well be offered a telephone consultation, and we're finding that that's working quite well. People aren't skipping their appointments for a start, which is a good sign. But the NHS has thought about how to keep you safe and how to treat you and get the treatment you need as quickly and safely as possible. Sadly, people's fear got in the way, and that did cost lives, and I really don't want that to happen again.
Yeah, it's a very, very important point. Thank you for answering that, Justin. We've got a question here about the flu vaccine. I know you mentioned earlier that you have to have the flu vaccine at least 4 weeks before the COVID vaccine. But we have a question here about the availability of it, as they've had problems accessing it. Do you have any sort of insight on that at all?
So generally what I've heard is that people are having issues if they're in the 50 to 65 or 64 age group. So they're the new younger age group who are eligible, who don't have any other health conditions. So if you're eligible for the flu jab in a normal year, that doesn't seem to have been a problem. But if you were in the extra group, which was that 50 to 64, then they were asked to wait, almost to wait till the end of the queue. Now, last week, NHS England said new supplies of the flu vaccine were being distributed. So if you are in that 50 to 64 age group or any of the other eligible groups and you've had a problem before, now's the time to get in contact with your GP practice or your pharmacy and see whether appointments have been reopened. It changed, different practices are doing different things, but the stock is now coming through to them. What I think won't happen is you won't see the rest of us being able to access a flu jab this year, because it is being prioritised for those that are more at risk. But if you're eligible for an NHS flu jab and you got told there weren't any a couple of weeks ago, now's the time to go back and ask again, because the new stock has been delivered.
That's great, thank you. There was a question about the Heartlands, which I've seen that you have answered, but I'm just going to take that opportunity to say that there are currently members of staff at the Heartlands who are on strike, as the Heartlands management there have changed their rotas, meaning they could lose up to £1,000 in pay. So just wanted to kind of extend our solidarity to them. Obviously we clapped for these members of staff once a week, so now we need to make sure that they are paid fairly for their work. I think the final question, and then we will move on, as I know you've had a very, very busy day, as I'm sure you have most days this year, Justin. And then we'll move on. We've just got a question here, again, a follow on from some of the stuff that's already been said. If someone had a need for an urgent knee operation, what are the kind of prospects of that at the moment? I guess that's one of those things that's constantly changing, depending on the number of cases and number of hospitalizations. But I guess sort of like between now and Christmas, what would the prospects of that be, do you think?
Well, I think we've got to be really blunt about what's urgent. So, you know, I think the reality is that urgent in these times and the pressures the NHS are under is life-saving. So that's going to be the prioritisation. So it's unusual for a knee operation, I'm afraid, to be life-saving. There are some rare cancers that affect bones where it would be, but for most people it's urgent because it's extremely painful. And they're in a lot of pain and it's quite disabling. But you know, we have to keep in mind there's a limited number of doctors, there's a limited number of beds in hospital, and the bit that's most likely to delay planned surgery, like a knee or a hip operation, is that the intensive care bed or the ventilated bed that you need after your surgery for about 24 hours is just not available. And that's the thing that stops the surgery. It's not the risk of COVID, it's not the surgeon, it's usually that we haven't got a bed for you to go into after your operation because there aren't enough spare ones because we've got COVID patients in them. So that's what tends to be delaying these procedures. What I would say is if you've got an appointment already, a date for going into hospital, they should be talking to you about the plans, because you'll need to test and quarantine and stuff before you go into hospital. If you haven't got a date yet, I think it's unlikely it's going to happen before Christmas, given everything else that's going on. But on the other hand, I don't think you're going to be waiting 6 months for it. So, you know, your individual clinical team should be talking to you. If you're under a consultant for your surgeon, a consultant surgeon, that team should be telling you what the plan is. So if you haven't heard, if you had a date, check with the ward, they'll tell you what's going on. If you haven't got a date, then I think you probably will have to sit tight a little bit longer, I'm afraid. And if you do, then please talk to your GP about what else can be done to help with the pain and help you manage. If you have got to manage for longer than you were planning for, then please reach out and have that conversation, because there may be other things that could be done to help manage the pain and manage your situation if you're going to have to wait a bit longer. So please don't suffer in silence and reach out to your GP and your clinical team for help.
That is fantastic. Thank you for that, Justin, and for everything you're doing sort of for the city as a whole. This must have been the most challenging year of your career so far. So hopefully 2021 will be a little bit easier on you and all of us for that matter. But yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, thank you, Justin. That was really, really helpful. And we'll make sure that all of that info is passed down to our constituents who maybe couldn't attend today. Thank you very much. So we will move on then to item 4 on the agenda, which is the Poole Farm redevelopment update. And we have Clive French with us, who is the Principal Housing Development Officer, to give us an update on that. Just to add, sorry, I think every question in the chat did have an answer or was mentioned at some point. If we did accidentally miss you off, however, please do email me. And I'll pass it on to Justin and make sure you get a response back. Now, if we can hand over to Clive to give us an update, and thank you for joining us, Clive.
Hi there, my name's Clive French. I'm the Councillors, look after the Poole Farm development, and we're working on it for, well, probably a year and a half or so now on the plan application. But I'll come on to that in a minute. So I'll give you an update as to where we are with regards to clearance as well. And as you know, rehousing of the tenants affected, the acquisition of private properties started in.
Sorry, Clive. I think you might be a little bit muffled. I don't know if that's
Okay.
just me it's just the mic sounds a little bit muffled.
I think your mic needs adjustment, or you need to come close to mic. You can hardly hear you.
I just accidentally muted you then rather than myself. Sorry, Clive. That now you're making no sound.
Clive, now you are on mute. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay. Hear me now?
It's a little bit
not
better. It's
clearly.
very muffled.
Okay, I'll come closer. I don't know where that is. I'm not sure. Anyway, so we're now in year 4 of year program of rehousing those affected in Poole Farm. This year, the clearance team has started engaging with tenants in Pigside Drive, Hillmeads Road, and Heather House. And
Clive, I'm extremely sorry, but we can't hear you properly.
Okay.
I don't know what's problem.
I don't know what I can do. Just have a... I'm up, and I don't know what I can do from here to help with that. Apologies. Can you hear me now?
No, it's just very muffled. Is all. Is that? I assume everybody else is getting that problem.
Yeah.
It's the same problem which we got. Like,
I don't know what to say. I don't know what I can do.
find a nice big hammer.
I've never had that problem before with any other meetings I've had.
Try turning the camera off.
Okay, yeah, that's an idea. I'll do that.
Yeah, that may work. Yes.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. Is that any better?
No.
A little.
Okay.
Clive, sorry, I need you to turn your camera off, otherwise I can't send it live anyway. So
I have turned it off.
yeah, can you? No, I need you to turn it on, because otherwise you won't come across at all.
Okay, I'm back on. Can anybody hear me?
Can hear you, Clive, but it's just a little muffled, so perhaps you better just carry on.
I'll just plod on.
Yeah.
I'll get as close as I can. And be as loud as I can. Demolition of the properties in Gildas Avenue and Bentmead Grove has completed, as you probably see, and Barbary House, the demolition, I'm told, is starting this week and will be completed by 26th of February. Year 5 of the rehousing programme will start in April, and that'll be the last year, and the tenants affected there will be Arrow, Walk, Hillmeads Road, Walkers Heath Road and Burdock House. So those tenants will be contacted prior to April by the clearance team to discuss their rehousing options and explain the process. In terms of the development, the planning applications for Poole Farm and Shannon Road were submitted and registered on the 5th of November, and it's 2 applications. There's a full application for Gildas Avenue, Barretts Road and Bentmead Grove, and that's for 117 units. And then there's an outline application for Hillmeads Road and Shannon Road, and that's up to 150 units. And the areas are split into 5 separate areas, if you like. Gildas Avenue, there's 74 units in that area for social rents. Bentmead Grove is going to be 15 units for social rents. Barrett's Road, 28 units for rents. And then Hillmeads Road is 6 units for rent and 65 units for sale. Shannon Road, but that's split into 40 units for rent apartments, and then 39 houses for sale. So overall, there's 163 units for rent and 104 units for sale. The determination of the plan application will be due in February, and after that we aim to tender for a building contractor and start the procurement process and to appoint a contractor probably in late summer, and start on site in Gildas Avenue and Bentmead Grove, which obviously are the first sites that are clear now, in probably January 2022. And then as the years go on, after then, as the sites become available, the other sites will come. Like Barrett's Road will start in August 22. Hillmeads Road, August 23. Hillmeads Road, August 23, and then Shannon Road, July 23. So these are all estimated dates at the moment, obviously, and once we've appointed a contractor, we'll get into the idea of firming those up. That's all really I've got to say at the moment. If anybody's got any questions they want to ask me about any of that.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. We haven't had any questions in the chat. I don't know if Peter, if you've got anything that you want to add or to ask Clive before we move.
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you, Alex. Clive, we've had some queries about the security around the site. We've had a number of residents who are remaining who've had trouble with arson. Somebody's shed was set alight, and their garden set on fire. What level of security have we got on the site, particularly at night? And going through that was actually in Hillmeads Road. I know that there has been security in Gildas, certainly. Do we have any patrols or anything like that in the area?
I'm not sure, to be honest. That's something I'd have to take up with the clearance team and find out what's going on. I'm not aware that there is, but as I say, at the moment I don't know.
Okay.
I'll check that for you.
And part of the original regeneration was to look at the fold as well. And I understand that's not being redeveloped in the sense of housing, but is there anything in the offing to improve the properties at the fold?
Well, it's something that we continue to consider. We did a bit of work, well, it must be 18 months ago now, probably more than that. And we got some quotes from a Civico for improvement works, but it came out at a pretty hefty sum, and so that is sort of there, but it's a question of where we get the funding from to do that, really. So, but yeah, I think it would complement what we're doing across the estates if we can identify funding to do it.
Well, certainly one of the complaints we have is that obviously there's been over time a loss of community facilities up there, and no investment in the shopping area at all. We've lost the community centre at the moment. I don't know what's happening to that in Greaves Hall. We've also lost I think 2 other community buildings which have been demolished. So the actual investment, not just in housing but in the other side of activities in the area, needs to be looked at as part and parcel of the regeneration, even if we need to seek funding from elsewhere. Yeah.
No, I think it's something that we will continue to look at and continue to consider, and hopefully we can get something done.
the final question I had is how's the rehousing of tenants going? Have we had? Can you give us some kind of percentage of how many have rehoused locally and how many have chosen to go further afield?
I can't, but I can get the clearance manager to do that. I did speak to him today, in fact, in advance of the meeting, to say was we still on track with things, considering the issues with COVID, and he said that we are still rehousing. That it hasn't slowed things down, particularly at this stage. We are able to I am able to say, as I said earlier, go forward with the programme next year. So I don't believe that there's a problem. I can find out from Andrew what the actual figures are in terms of rehousing and where they're going to.
It would be helpful if you can, because obviously that's one of the things that's thrown at councillors, is that local people aren't being enabled to take advantage of different properties in the locality, not changing schools for their children and stuff like that, not having to change doctors. So it's quite good. But just to finally thank you for all the work that you've done in getting this program of regeneration and demolition, getting it done so fluidly, really, throughout this horrible period we've been having. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that.
That's brilliant. Thank you. We've just had one question, which is, do prospective Birmingham City Council residents around the Aldi site know that it is there when given tenancy, and do you envisage any issues from tenants once the store is open regarding parking, overspill and light and noise issues?
That's probably a question for Russell, actually, because that's his scheme.
Yeah.
So,
we've given him a head start on that one. He's got some time to think about that now. Okay, then we'll move on that note then, I think. Thank you again, Clive, for joining us virtually. We really do appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you again, and keep up the good work. Thank you. And on that then, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which, as mentioned, is Russell Knight, who's the Principal Housing Development Officer. This one of the Primrose Estate redevelopment, and then the Foyle Road and the Redditch Road roadworks, which are in full flow at the moment, which I know because I ran there the other day while they were doing roadworks and had to take a detour, which wasn't very nice. When you'd already clocked up about 9.5 miles, but there we are. Russell, if you're there and are able to give us an update now, that would be absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Councillor Aitken, it's Kay. Could you just deal with the other issues on this item first, because I think we've lost Russell somewhere. I'll try and see if I can get him back for you, but he seems to have dropped off the screen. So if you could take it round the other way, we've got plenty of engineers here to deal with the other issues. So
that's absolutely fine. We'll try and get Russell back. But like we say, in the meantime, we have various people now. We're going to just have a quick update on Rednell Road. Now, I know from my casework and from my email inbox that this comes up quite a lot, and there have been a number of accidents on Rednell Road over the course of this year. So I think we have Sajid now, who's going to give us a bit of an update, and then we'll call in other people when necessary. Is that correct, Sajid?
Yeah, Rednell Road scheme, as I think I informed you a couple of months ago, has been approved. It's has been prioritized for local safety.
Am I correct in thinking that Sajid needs to have his camera on for it to be streamed, Kay?
Unfortunately, my laptop doesn't have camera on it. It's a very old one.
Okay, is there a way around that, Kay?
I got a very old laptop without any camera in it. That's why I'm sitting without any tie.
Hopefully people can hear you, Sajid. If anybody's out there can just put in the Q&A box whether they can hear Sajid speaking or not, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, Sajid, if you want to carry on, and then we'll let you know if there's any.
Rednell program entry proposal for Rednell Ski Road has been approved, and scheme currently is being investigated by a project manager. Her name is Rachel Rock. At this stage, what she is going to do is analyze all accidents which have been reported to the police on this road, and based on the analysis of those accidents, she will have to find out what are the common factors leading to those accidents, and based on identifying common factors, she will identify what measures are suitable to address those issues, so that those factors which are leading to those accidents can be eliminated to enhance the safety on that road. So she is working on it, but it is at primary stage. She may need a couple of months to conduct some surveys, site inspection, and conduct accident analysis, investigation, etc. And after that, she will be in a position to develop some proposals. But it is at initial stage. But the good story is that it has been identified for possible improvements.
That's great. That's really good to know. I know obviously that sort of every area of the council this year has been held up at different points because of lockdown and coronavirus. But is there, and again, this is, I almost apologise for asking this, but do you have any timescale on that at all? Do you know how long that body of work will take, or when we will have some sort of concrete proposals?
I think sometime in February she may be able to give us some sort of like idea what will be her proposals for this road. Okay,
that's really good then, because funnily enough, we have penciled in another ward forum for February. So that could coincide perfectly.
Yeah, we can drag her in that forum, and she would be able to directly present her scheme.
Yeah, that would be absolutely brilliant if we could have that sort of report back in February. Yeah. I know there are some other sort of staff members on the call who are doing some work on this. So if any of them do want to jump in, have anything to add, then please do now. No, I think we're okay there.
They've all gone quiet. I don't know if Stuart from Kia wants to say anything, but we've got Russell back as well now, so yeah, that's good.
That's brilliant. If I bring in Stuart, if you've got an update or anything to add, and then we will sort of come back to Rednell Road as a bigger item in the February ward forum. I think that sounds really positive, and I'm really looking forward to seeing those proposals. So thank you for that, Sajid. I know you've worked very hard on this. So Stuart, if we could have a quick update from you, and then we'll bring in Russell, and we are back on track. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the invite, councillors. So yes, Stuart Cross, highway steward for Kia in the south of the city. So I work with the councillors, work with the local engineers, and obviously we maintain the carriageway and footways, we do the street lighting and the drainage, etc. So the good thing is lots of schemes coming up in your area at the moment, so you may have seen some already going on. Recent works on Waters Heath Road, and a lot of work down there recently. But from now until June, got a lot of stuff coming on, a lot of footway work. So I'll just shout out a few roads we're doing: Grange Hill Road, Meadow Hill Road, Varden Way, Bradshaw Avenue, Red Hill Road, a footways there being done, Primrose Hill, and also some carriageway work. Grange Rise, sections of Redditch Road, Wood Meadow Road, Primrose Hill again, and SNU as well, Pershore Road South. There's a section of there being done in the new year, so it's good to see a lot of schemes now happening from this year and obviously on into next year. So yeah, that's a bigger stuff that's happening at the moment. A little bit of background, obviously we've got a team of inspectors on the network. You'll see probably walking around carrying out inspections, raising work, So if anybody raises any inquiries through the Birmingham.gov website, that have one of our guys on site within the following days to investigate that for you, and obviously you'll get a response on the back of that. So yeah, some good positive stuff at the moment, really. So yeah, a lot of things to report, but good, they're in a good direction. So if there's any questions out there, any issues that people might have, want to talk about or raise, councillors or members of the public.
Yeah, that's good. That's a really good positive update, and thank you for once again joining us, Stuart. Always very sort of responsive and keen to come to these meetings, so thank you for that. I don't think we've had any questions. The one thing I'll just say to people watching at home, if you do have any kind of highways issues that Stuart can help with, please do feel free to get in touch with myself or Peter. We can start off that dialogue with Stuart and get those issues looked at and then hopefully rectified. But I don't think we've had any questions for you, Stuart. So thank you very much for the update. Peter, have you got anything you want to talk to Stuart about? No.
No, I don't think so. The only thing that I was hanging around really was the footpath between St Nicholas Place and St Nicholas Gardens, which was very poorly lit. I don't know whether, and also needed some trees cutting, but that's your patch, so I don't know whether it's been done.
Yeah, no, yeah. So we have spoken about it. Yeah, Councillor, I'll put it down on the list, and I'll get back to you this week on that one. No problem. Okay,
that's brilliant.
That's really good.
No, I'm very pleased with the work that was done on Redditch Road at between Burford Park and Grovewood Drive. The team's done a really good job in cutting back there to make pavement passable.
Good to hear.
That's great. So yeah, thank you for joining us again, Stuart. And we have Russell back after a momentary loss of connection, which I think we've all done at some point over the last few months. So Russell, yeah, if you are able to give us an update on the Primrose Estate redevelopment and also the roadworks on Foyle Road and Redditch Road, and then again, if you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box and we will get on to answering them. Russell.
Okay, evening, and thanks for the invitation, and a couple of apologies really. Firstly, sorry about the connection. I've put it down to a lost connection. I may have inadvertently pressed something and just gone, but anyway, I'm back. And apologies for the picture in the background. I attended a retirement social earlier today, and that was the guy who was retiring, and I can't get rid of it. So you'll have to put up with that while I'm talking, I'm afraid. So, sorry about that.
Live with it.
Councillors, if it's okay with you, there's a colleague who is with me, and I hope I didn't miss anything, Tayyib Rafiq, who's going to talk more about the roadworks that are taking place as part of the regeneration scheme. There he is. He's infinitely more qualified than I am, so he'll do that on my behalf. So thanks for that, Tayyib. But first of all, well, start off with a bit of disappointing news. This site closed down today, early at about 9:15, because there was a COVID outbreak. And as it stands at the moment, I don't know when the site is going to reopen. I suspect it probably will affect the house building at this stage, because obviously we're at such a point now that we're developing and finishing off the insides of many of the properties, and obviously that's the riskier part of the disease. But I haven't been down there. I'm due to go down there tomorrow, so I may find a little bit more out tomorrow. But that's where we are, and what it does mean is I did have 2 handovers taking place tomorrow, which unfortunately we've had to cancel at short notice. The scheme as a whole, I suppose it would be fair to say, at long last, that from a Birmingham Municipal Housing Trust perspective, it is coming towards the end. We've had, out of the 147 houses that we have been building for rent, we've had 119 of those handed over. And apart from 10, which will probably not hand over until June next year, because we've had an issue with the Virgin cabling, the rest of those ought to hand over by the end of January. So to all intents and purposes, the scheme from a housing perspective is nearing completion. And then there are obviously other parts of the regeneration which are still ongoing. But again, and Tay will elaborate on this a little bit more than I will, but the Aldi store is due to open on the 10th of December, which means by implication that the majority or all of the roadworks will be complete by that date, if not slightly before. We then have the park, Primrose Park, which is obviously ongoing. You won't have seen any progress with that at the moment, simply because there hasn't been any. The park is due to be situated where the current welfare cabins are sited, where Kia have their welfare cabins. So obviously, in order to commence the park, those cabins need to be removed. But I'm advised that it's anticipated that a start on the park ought to be made around the summertime, which will be in good time for the planting season next autumn. And I think, just looking at my notes, I think pretty much that is where we are at this stage. I'm perfectly happy to take any questions that anybody's got. I did see one on the Q&A. I think it was from somebody called Aaron. And he was asking about prospective BCC residents around the Aldi site. Yes, they do know, and yes, it is obvious, really. Do we envisage any issues from tenants once the store is open regarding parking, overspill, light noise issues? Difficult to say, really. You know, hopefully not. It's a reasonable distance away from some of our properties, but obviously there could be light and noise pollution issues. I don't know. We've done our best, obviously, through the planning process to minimise as much of that as possible. So hopefully that's probably something we're going to find out over time rather than at this moment, unfortunately. But I'm perfectly willing now to take any questions if anybody has any for me.
Yes, Alex, I've got one or two.
Yeah, jump straight in, Peter.
Fire away, Peter.
Okay, Russell. We've been having reports of cars speeding along Teviot Road, and requests for speed bumps. Now, I know it's going to be a bus route along to the Aldi probably, so it would only be able to be done for part of that. But would it be possible to consider any traffic calming, either with this build or with the subsequent build that hasn't issued a contract yet for the other 50
for the other units? Yeah. Where's the speeding taking place, Peter? Because you said Teviot Grove.
No, Teviot Road. Is it?
There's Teviot Grove. That's the one that goes past the old Greenwood tree in the school, and that turns around the corner, and then we've got the new spine road off that, which obviously isn't open yet. So I can't.
No, it's down that straight bit of road. After you go around the corner.
I don't think it's been.
They're complaining about 40 miles an hour cars going down there, and particularly as on the corner there, you've got a school as well, obviously. So.
I don't know whether the local engineer would be able to assist. It's certainly not part of our scheme that we're due to supply, and I don't know whether Taib will contradict me here, but sometimes these things tend to be put in response to a number of incidents. I don't know if that is still the case, but to answer your question honestly, Peter, there were never any plans to put any calming in there.
Are there any plans to put crossing points for pedestrians?
On Teviot? No.
Well, even on the new spine road that's going past the supermarket.
There's going to be a pedestrian crossing. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Because there is going to be one across the Redditch road. We know that, but I'm not
Across,
sure.
I think there's going to be one across Green Lane as well. Is it Green Lane or Foyle Road? I can never remember which is which.
Foyle Road is
Foyle, isn't it? Foyle.
Green Lane is further up the hill.
Further up, isn't it? Foyle, yeah. I'm sure there's one going to be there. Yeah.
Well, hopefully Tahib can tell us about those.
There will be 2 pedestrian crossing points on the new Spine Road. With regards to Teviot Grove, the roadworks aren't actually finished yet. We need to still do the surface course. I know Councillor Aitken did question what the progress with the residential area, so around Teviot Grove was. Due to the heavy site traffic, it was decided to prevent any further damage being caused on a freshly laid carriageway or footway, or to spend money on replacing or repairing that residential area. We'd complete those works once the Spine Road and the Redditch Road works were complete. That way all the heavy works traffic has disappeared. These works are scheduled to start in the new year. Currently we're expecting the Spine Road and Redditch Road works to be completed by the 9th of December. Good news is everything is on track. We're doing the signalling next week by Monday, and we're expecting the junction works to be completed next week as well. And late next week we're doing a safety audit. I know there have been a few questions regarding vehicle manoeuvres on the Redditch Road or from Greenwood Drive. We will formally respond to the residents who have raised a few questions or concerns. That we'll do within the next week. But in the meantime, we have got a safety audit happening next week on hopefully Thursday or Friday. And if there are still some safety concerns similar to what was questioned about Teviot Grove and the speeding, we can always complete a stage 4 safety audit, which is always done a year after the works are complete. This provides an overview of data, what we can use, and it provides us with any traffic collision data, and it allows us to make a better observation of what works or what remedials are required, whether that's traffic calming measures or others.
Yeah. Is it possible that you can share section 38 and section 278 drawings and stage 3 road safety audit with me?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, please. If you could email me, please, those.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
That's great. Have you got anything to add to that, Peter? Thank you both for those updates. Is there anything to add?
No,
Peter?
only to thank both sets of officers. They've worked like Trojans through this period, and the fact that it's got to the state it's in now, and particularly the Redditch Road, which is now on time, is absolutely amazing. And thanks to all the staff involved, and I hope they'll take it back to their teams.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
I think you're on mute, Councillor Aitken.
Yes, it was bound to happen at some point. That. Thank you, Kate. I did thank both Russell and Taib for joining us. And we'll move on to the final item on the agenda tonight, which is community/councillors update. I think on that point, at this point, I will take the question in the chat. What is the position about McDonald's on Parsons Hill opening 24/7? I am led to believe this is still not 100% confirmed yet, but I am led to believe that that application for 24-hour license has been rejected, and what I have heard from that licensing subcommittee is that the local residents who made their views, who submitted their views on that, were very convincing. So if you were one of those, well done. but obviously we are still awaiting a formal confirmation on that. So any other updates? I think, Peter, have you got anything? I've got a couple of things that might be worth raising. It's obviously been a while since we've all been together, so probably too many updates to go through one by one. But Peter, if you have anything before I jump in again.
Yes, I've got obviously the proposed demolition of the police station on the corner of High Meadow Road, and a planning application has now been put in, so a planning consultation will have to go ahead. I know that a number of residents are very concerned about this. I think Steve Carter has been in touch about the level, the overdevelopment of the site, really, and also the knocking down of the police houses as well. We can't really afford to lose housing, certainly in this area. So that will be one that I'll be seeking to get to come to planning committee, having not expressed a view yet, but clearly there are residents who have expressed their views, and any more that wish to write in, it would be very helpful to do so. The other thing that is not really my patch is 107 Rednall Road, which a number of residents from my areas complained about the level of development there, where 2 houses have been approved to be built on the Rednall Road, but a third one was being built in the grounds. That's been raised as an enforcement issue. Enforcement have been out and visited, and I think they have issued a notice to say that it's not in accordance with the plans that were agreed. What transpires from that, I'm not sure, but it is an active case, and it affects both our wards, and of course it will also affect your plans perhaps for Rednall Road Junction as well. I'll leave it there for a minute. I think the other thing that's been raised is crime in the area, which the stats are showing a horrific increase in crime, which I think we need to deal with at the next meeting by getting the police or somebody to come and tell us exactly what they're proposing to do to get the rate down.
Yeah, thank you for that, Peter. I believe that, if I remember rightly, there were some issues with getting the police on these calls for various technical reasons, but what we will do is request a statement from them, and then myself and Peter will be able to, any questions that come from that, we will be able to raise them with the local police teams. That reminds me, I was due to go on a walkabout with some of the local police, or was about to ask to go on a walkabout with the police, and then when the second lockdown hit, I thought probably best not to. But then I think the only other updates from me that I can think of off the top of my head is that myself and some of my colleagues, alongside some local community groups, recently set up an organisation called the Northfield Food Service. This was in the wake of a vote in the House of Commons to where the government refused to extend food provision in the half-term holidays. Now the Northfield constituency has the highest percentage of its pupils on free school meals in the country. And many of those families really do struggle to put food on the table when their children aren't in school. And we have been delivering meals to their door, hot meals, to make sure they can have one hot meal a day, which is obviously very good for their mental well-being, their physical well-being, and also their study and their education too. There are many people who are on this call who have helped out, who have volunteered as drivers, so thank you for that. And if you do want to support Northfield Food Service, or if you need support or know of someone in the local area that needs support, then please do get in touch, and we can make sure that happens. I've had a message here to thank the local police team for their proactive work after 2 recent burglary arrests. That is, yeah, second that completely. They are very responsive and do respond to our concerns a lot and let us know when there is crime on our local area. I'm just looking through the questions again. One, a council is finally drawing a plan to tackle the climate emergency declared 17 months ago. Could there be a special ward forum for local people to be consulted and to discuss this plan before it goes to council for adoption in January? I think that is very good, and I'm happy to have a look at doing that before it goes in. I'm not sure of the date. I'll double check to see if we can do that, but I'd certainly be up for that. I know my personal view is that the climate emergency after coronavirus will be the sort of the biggest issue facing the nation and the world for the next generation. So I'm more than happy to sort of bring people together on that and see how we can sort of make our local area cleaner, greener and safer for everybody moving forward.
St Nicholas Place, can you?
Yes. Oh, so yes, St Nicholas Place. I think when we last met, they were on the verge of closing it. Since then, it has closed, but is now temporarily being used to house the Norfield Community Partnership Food Bank. That's moved around quite a bit this year. It went from Norfield Community Partnership's office on Norfield High Street, which was way too small for how much work it was doing, to then move to Ballands Cross, and now it is at St Nicholas Place. I'm really glad that there was a position agreed sort of between the church and the local community groups and the action group to make that happen. So rather than such a wonderful building lying empty, it's now a kind of vital part of ensuring that local people are supported throughout coronavirus. So that's some great news, and hopefully there will be some long-term plans to come of that. The people who run St Nicholas Place do have a couple of outside COVID secure Christmas events coming up, which I did ask them to provide me, but they haven't done yet. I will make sure that that is sent out to everybody, because again, following on from what Justin said earlier, I think leading up to Christmas, it would be good if we can all support local, and obviously supporting local business, but also supporting those local community groups who really do incredible work all year round, and did so before coronavirus. But the sort of outbreak and the lockdown really did highlight just how important that work is that they have been doing, supporting local families, local children, and just local people in need generally. So if you can support them, if you're in a position to support them, then please do. I haven't had any more questions in the chat that I can see. But if you do have anything, now is your opportunity. But otherwise, I think we are
Saturday the 12th of December for the farmers market.
Yeah. Yeah, we should be back on for the farmers market. Unfortunately, it won't be the all singing, all dancing, quite literally, Christmas market that it usually is, because we're not allowed to have singing or people congregating too much. I don't believe we have a Santa this year either, which is sad, but we'll at least be able to support a great community venture ahead of Christmas, and also support local traders who sell some really good products. Is there anything else? I don't think there's anything else. I think that is that. So thank you, Kay, for making this happen. You're also a superstar, and thank you everybody for listening.
You're welcome.
If there are any sort of questions off the back of this, please do raise them with myself and Peter, and we will do everything that we can to get answers to them. But we have got a meeting planned or in the pipeline for February, so we'll let you know about that too. So I think, unless there's anything else, I think we are wrapped up for the evening there. So have a wonderful Christmas, everybody. I know this has been a really tough year, but at least with the restrictions lifting over Christmas, we might have the opportunity to see some family or not, depending on whether you feel safe to. And we will see you after Christmas, and hopefully 2021 will be a lot better for us than 2020, and we will see you then.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Hello.
Foyle.
Have a great Christmas.